My name's 𝗕𝗲𝗴𝗵𝗲. I am the founder of the 𝗕𝗲𝗴𝗵𝗲 blog and the co-founder of the nonprofit fan base, Fertility Awareness Database. I am excited and, I'll be honest, a little nervous to be coming to you today to talk about why the church doesn't allow birth control, like any birth control, even condoms. If you're anything like me and you know how hormonal birth control works in a woman's body, it's really easy to be like, I don't really want to touch that with a 10-foot pole and I don't need my religion to tell me so. But even condoms or diaphragms, like these things that are kind of natural maybe, why are these not even licit? So let's dig into this a little bit. I'm not going to quote to you church catechism and encyclicals and all of those types of things. If you want those things, I can put those in the notes for this video for you to go and look into on your own. What I want to do is just to talk to you about the application of church teaching, why the church says this, and let's just talk about the fact that it's messy. And it kind of sucks that this is what our church teaches. But also let's dig into the why and why it is ultimately good. So let's start pretty foundational. The way that I like to frame this whole topic is simply this. The truth is very simple, very straightforward, very cut and dry. However, applying the truth in a fallen world is messy and it's complicated. And it feels unfair, and it feels unjust. And that's not an accident. This is a fallen world. We were made for paradise, and yet this is what we're stuck with. So everything that we experience in life has the potential to bring us suffering, to be a cross, to make us make sacrifices. And the thing is, we were not created for those things. So when we experience them, our natural first instinct is to rebel. Well, this is hard. God loves me. God wants life abundant. Why does it have to be hard? Well, because we have free will. Because we have the ability to say no to the love of God. Therefore, we have to deal with the consequences of our no's. Not just our no's, but the no's of everybody else around us. And yes, that is an injustice, but that is the reality of the world that we live in. So how do we reconcile these things, especially whenever we're talking about birth control, and what the heck does any of that have to do with birth control and why we can't use it? So let's hone in on what is the simple truth about sex and marriage. The truth is simple, straightforward, cut and dry. Applying it is messy and complicated. Okay. The truth about sex is that it is confined to marriage between one man and one woman. That all sexual acts, the total sexual act, must be unitive and procreative. And that they all must be total, free, and fruitful. That's the basic truth of sex. You look through all of church teaching, that's what it all boils down to. Dual primary purposes of union and procreation, and that each act must be a total, free, and fruitful gift from one spouse to the other. So whenever you talk about birth control and contraception of any kind, and there's 3 different categories. There's the chemical, which is what we know as hormonal birth control, which is, IUDs, the pill, the insert. By the way, I should mention, there may be a few awkward pauses. I am just going to go ahead and claim pregnancy brain. Bear with me. So that's chemical birth control. There's surgical birth control, vasectomies, and tubal ligation. And then there's barrier methods, condoms, female condoms, diaphragms, used in conjunction with a spermicide. So these are all different contraceptive methods that are available. Why can't we use any of them? Doesn't the church understand? I mean, it's a bunch of celibate men calling these rules. What the heck? They have no idea what it's like to live the reality of this truth out in my marriage. My marriage, I have incredibly horrible periods or, really difficult pregnancies. The sacrifices that using NFP is forcing on us, we never get to have sex. And when we do, I'm not in the mood. My libido has tanked. All of these different types of things. This is unfair. This isn't right. We have a perfectly just reason not to have a child. Why can't we avail ourselves of at least condoms? I get it. 110%. I get it. I've wrestled with this question. Why do you think I can say it so well? It comes down to, again, the simple truth and what the nature of sex is. It's unitive and procreative, and it is a total, free, and fruitful gift from one spouse to the other. What the church asks of those who are married is this: unless you are willing to give yourself totally, unless you are willing to engage in a sexual act that is totally unitive, totally procreative, totally free, totally fruitful, you shouldn't be having sex at all. That's what the church is essentially saying. And it's a really difficult truth to live out. I get it. It's hard. It doesn't make sense. But that's part of our calling as Christians, right? It's not to say that the problems in your marriage don't matter. They do. They absolutely matter. Your sex life is a microcosm of your entire marriage. Your sex life is not the goal of your marriage. Your sex life is a component of a healthy marriage, right? Everything that goes on in your marriage is going to come out in your sex life. The things that become difficult in your sex life, whether it be abstinence, whether it be spouses being on the same page about avoiding or achieving pregnancy, whatever's going on, that's your sex life highlighting something that the two of you need to take outside the bedroom to deal with, to talk about, to work on communication. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. But this is what marriage and what NFP within the context of marriage does. It brings those problems to the foreground. It brings that selfishness to the surface. And it's jarring. And it's crushing. Because you see it both in yourself and this person that you love deeply. You didn't sign up for this on your wedding day. You had no idea. Your wedding day was the best day of your life. You put on a gorgeous dress. You put on an awesome tux or suit or bow tie and suspenders, whatever you did. And you made a vow to love each other with a divine love. And now all of a sudden you're finding out that in order to love each other with a divine love, you're going to encounter a cross, even in your bedroom. What the heck? I thought this was the place of just pure euphoria. It can be, but under a certain framework. That's the key. That's the key. Is that in order for your sex life to be truly life-giving, not just in a biological sense of children, but truly life-giving for your marriage, you have to be able to give yourself totally, freely to each other each time. Now, we're fallen human beings. It's not going to happen perfectly like that every single time, but that's the goal. And when we fail in that, problems will arise and they'll start to come out, and it can be rough. Now, I will 100% agree. There's not a lot of support systems in place currently for couples to be able to navigate these difficulties that arise in their marriage. I'm with you. That's one of the reasons why we put together this conference. That's one of the things that everybody participating in this conference tries to work on in their own separate ministries. That's one of the reasons why we all came together, because we know this is a huge struggle. We know this is hard. I mean, some days it would just be really nice if I could just be an atheistic heathen, wear condoms, do birth control, get a tubal ligation, whatever, and just have sex as much as I wanted. What we have to understand is that sex is a gift. It's not the end of marriage. Sex is not an end unto itself. It's not the goal of marriage. The goal of marriage, in part, is intimacy. This goes back to the unitive aspect of sex. The goal is intimacy. Sex is a means. It's not the end. When you start to understand that sex is the means and not the end, the way that you do sex matters. It matters. Your intention, the logistics, or the things that you add in, the things that you don't add in, all of that, it matters. It matters why you're coming together. Am I using my spouse, or am I loving them? Now, again, let's kind of hone in on some specific examples. I'm kind of getting a little lofty. Let's bring it down to earth. One of the most common issues that couples face is when women are in phase 2, they're nearing ovulation, their estrogen is off the charts. That's when they're most in the mood for sex. And then after ovulation, their libido can tank. What I encourage women to do, first and foremost, don't be judgmental about yourself about your libido dropping off. Engage that reality with curiosity. Well, what's going on in my body? Well, I'm in my luteal phase. My body's not really interested in having sex, because having sex in biological terms is about continuing the species. I don't have an egg to fertilize, so my body just doesn't care anymore. But then what else is going on? What are other factors? We're whole persons. How's my relational health? Do I feel connected to my husband? Do we make that time to connect? What do I feel about my marriage as a whole? Well, we don't understand, we misunderstand female libido so dramatically. We assume that if we're not in the mood for sex, something is wrong with us. No, not at all. There's 2 different types of sex drives, and one of them is responsive, meaning you don't really get in the mood for sex until you're having sex. Once you learn that about yourself, that becomes a powerful tool of communication with your spouse. It might even be the husband who has a responsive sex drive. Either way, typically one spouse will have a spontaneous sex drive, meaning that you are in the mood up front. The other spouse will have a responsive sex drive, either male or female. But it's an opportunity not to dog on yourself and think something is wrong with who you are and how you were designed, and, to get angry at this, that, and the other. It's an opportunity to be curious. Well, my body is not responding to my spouse. How is our emotional and mental health in our relationship? Are we taking that time to connect? Another example that I thought of as I was planning this video is women who have very complicated pregnancies, maybe even have a situation where a pregnancy would be life-threatening. The husband who loves his wife dearly and wants to protect her comes to her and says, "Babe, I will go get a vasectomy." I hear this many, many, many times in my ministry. Why is that wrong in that case? The husband is acting out of love for his wife. He wants to protect her. He doesn't want her to suffer. He's willing to go through surgery so that his wife doesn't have to suffer a pregnancy. But the problem with that is they're trying to make something whole. They're trying to make their sex life whole through self-mutilation, in a certain sense. You can't heal something by tearing something apart that's healthy and good. If it needs work, okay. Now you might be thinking, well, what about hysterectomies, or, if I had an ectopic pregnancy and I had a portion of my fallopian tube removed? Again, intention matters. What's the intention with a vasectomy or a tubal ligation? to prevent pregnancy. The intention with a hysterectomy for medical purposes is this organ has to go in order for me to be able to live. Even in the most basic sense of just being able to thrive, right? So there's a difference. You can't have a whole, healthy sex life if you're only giving certain parts of yourself to your spouse in sex. Going back to the total, free, and fruitful. Unless I am freely giving all of who I am to my husband and him to me in return in every sexual act, something's missing. Something's not there. We are not having sex. We are not having the best possible sex. I know some of you are like, well, we're not having any sex. So what do we do about that? Well, I've already hit my time. That is probably a whole conference unto itself. I hope this has at least given you some idea of why we believe what we believe. It's not easy. I'm not saying it is. Again, the truth is very simple. Applying it is very messy. What I would encourage you to do is that this is something that you struggle with personally. Don't be afraid to wrestle with it. Don't be afraid to question it. The thing that I like to remind people a lot is the word Israel, which is the name given to Jacob after he wrestled with God, is the name given to God's chosen people. It literally means to wrestle with God. Israel means to wrestle with God. If you are one of God's chosen ones, you wrestle with him. You struggle. God, I don't understand this. How can this be your will for me? This is killing my marriage. This is hurting me. This is hurting my spouse. Why does it have to be this way? I encourage you to get honest in prayer. Because when you approach truth incarnate with honesty, he can meet you. He can meet you right there. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. You've probably possibly seen me before. I shared my story. That was one of the preloaded videos. But I hope that this whole conference is a blessing and a help to you. And I'm so glad that you're here. Keep in touch. All of our bios and everything is listed. So please reach out if you have further questions. I'd love to talk to you. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.